We're so lucky to have Frank Dawson and Abby Ginzberg here, who directed Agents of Change. And we also have Ginny Richards, who is one of the co-directors of Soul City. So I'd love to start with a couple of questions of my own and then throw to the audience. The first would be for Ginny. I did not know about Soul City, and I hope I'm not the only one. So how did you come across this story?
Yeah, we didn't know anything about it either when we found out about the story, and that was one of the reasons that we wanted to do it, is because it was such, it was amazing to us as North Carolina residents that we had never heard about it, that when we talked to people, they had never heard about it, that this was this completely overlooked part of, the history of the 70s, of the civil rights movement post, 69, post Dr. King and everything like that, that this was just not something that we talked about or knew about. So we found out about it actually through the magic of Google. We were graduate students, we were looking for a thesis film project, and we Googled North Carolina utopia. And, it was the first thing that came up, and myself and one of my other co-directors, who I'm really sad they couldn't be here today, but Shrey Del Sol had just finished, the two of us had just finished a project on race relations on Wake Forest campus. So we felt that this really combined so many of the things that we were really interested in talking about, with history, with race, with economics and community building, and yeah, that's how we found out about it.
Great. Well, thank you. And Abby and Frank, thank you as well for Agents of Change. I know that you both attended Cornell in the 70s, so can you talk a bit about your incredibly personal connection to the experience that we just saw?
You start.
Thank you, everybody, first of all, for coming to the film. And I need to acknowledge a couple of people also. First of all, our incredible editor, Marta Wall, who's here with us today.
Marta, where are you? Stand up. The film took 7 years, and Marta was with us pretty much the whole 7 years.
All right. Our executive producer, who really came through with helping us fund this film, coming down the home stretch, Sandra Evers Manley.
Sandra, where are you? In the back.
And then we also have participants who were in the film and who were in that building. Zachary Carter. Jackie Davis Manigault.
Is Irene here?
Irene Smalls.
I don't see Jahid. Well, there he is.
And from San Francisco State, Jahid Ashley. And then lastly, there are a couple of people here who were in that building also at Cornell at that time. Would you please stand? I don't want to forget anybody. Ruby Douglas, Carlton Holmes, and anyone else. Malik Stan Reeves. So again, Abby and I were at Cornell at that time. We did not know one another. We met,
and as you might guess, I was on the outside, not on the inside.
and I was one of the black students inside the building. It was our freshman year, and Abby and I met actually through a friend of both of us when Abby brought one of her films to the college that I work at Santa Monica College, and he knew I wanted to do this project. He knew Abby wanted to do this project. We had attempts before each of us. He put the two of us together. We met and talked for a while, and 7 years ago, we committed to doing this project together.
Yeah.
Amazing. Abby, do you
And
want to add?
let me just say, I think that for both of us, it was such a pivotal moment in our lives, that it was, it's like I've never wanted to tell a personal story before, and I didn't want to tell this one personally, so it's like it's still a third person story. But it really affected a lot of what I've done since and how I saw the world at the time and till today. So it felt, and that way it felt really personal to both of us. And there's no question that the film is in part strong because of our collaboration. And if you like the soundtrack, Frank gets double the credit for that one.
I also have to say, when it takes 7 years to complete a project, I can't tell you how many times we felt we had kind of like missed the moment.
Oh, yeah.
And then, you know, Occupy happens, a little forward, a little bit back. Then Black Lives Matters happens, a little bit forward, a little bit back. And now Donald Trump.
Has happened.
Can you add to the film?
Yeah. So the whole idea of being an agent of change, we really need to know and understand what happened in the past. That there was a time that we came through in which young people and a coalition of people got together and we were able to affect some change. And it is truly critical now that we come together to affect some change in terms of what we're about to face.
And just one more kind of point about having taken this film to many college campuses over the last few months. Frank and I have been kind of traversing the country, and really at almost every presentation, you know, a student raises his or her hand and says, we've got this problem with race, we've got that problem, what should we do? And there's a way in which I feel like the answer today is like, get yourselves together and start organizing, because it's like some of what's shifted, and I would say in the last 3 or 4 days, is people understand that finally. You know, and the students, I mean, that's part of who's protesting on Fifth Avenue, so if some of you were late getting here, you know, I think we're seeing kind of the beginning of some kind of a shift, and hopefully we'll see more of it. But students have been very receptive to this, but not quite ready to take some of the issues into their own hands, and I'm optimistic we're going to see a change there.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
I'll start with some questions from the audience. Yes, go right ahead.
Hello, thank you for coming. Could you comment about how this movement, evolved for other ethnic groups, to want to protest, Puerto Ricans and Asians, and then now, like, at the end of the film, how, the ethnic studies programs are dwindling?
Can everyone hear the
What-
question? I'll just repeat it. So he would love to know if you can talk about how the movement developed for other ethnic groups. And then, sorry,
What's the
Yeah.
impact of the fact that there have been cutbacks?
yes, exactly.
Yeah, well, first of all, you notice back in the 1960s, and this event at Cornell was only one of many.
Right.
You know, we demonstrated all
Every other day for something.
the entire time that we were there. There was the Vietnam War, there was the investment in South Africa, a lot going on. And as you could see from the representations in the film, we formed coalitions. It was led by black students, both at San Francisco State and at Cornell, but joined by others. And without those collaborations, not much would have been accomplished. And one of the things I'm excited about today when we go on these college campuses and we see student movements beginning to develop on these campuses, they're reflective of a broad base of people. And I have to say, just personally, the women are leading out front more than the men today, which is probably a good thing. But so, some similarities. Students ask, well, what can we do today? And the first thing we say is, don't pick up a gun. The reaction of the police today, students would not just be beat, they would be slaughtered. It's a different time, so it calls for different tactics. But at the same time, people coming together can be effective. And so it's just people getting together and recognize if we don't participate in our citizenship, we have no citizenship.
And I just would say one other thing about the question of the cutbacks. The example that I can speak to, because I went to the campus while the response was happening, there was about to be a very large cutback to the ethnic studies department budget at San Francisco State. And what was amazing was to see the incredible outpouring of support for ethnic studies at State. And this was from kids who weren't just ethnic studies majors. We're talking math majors and English majors, and all across the ethnic spectrum. People were out, they brought people from the community in, and they held back the cutbacks. So in a way, I mean, you really would hope that that's what would happen at San Francisco State, and this is where it all began. But that gave me some hope that the next time they try it at some other school, hopefully word of what happened at State will get out and there will be pushback. Because in fact, this is one of the things Frank and I have been talking about. This was a time where students actually whether or not we were conscious of it at the time or not, began to exercise some of the power that students have on these campuses. And that is something that some of today's students, I think, are not quite aware of. And so they have to experience doing something that puts them in touch with their own power. The administration has to respond in some way that maybe recognizes it, and then maybe we're in a different place around the issue of powerlessness. Right. So the San Francisco State students totally held back the tide and protected ethnic studies.
Right.